Ashok Kumar Nalathambi sir from NIT Tiruchirappalli, and all students of BE Mechanical Engineering and the faculty members of uh, Mechanical Department. So now I welcome our HOD, Dr. K. Chokalingam, to give a welcome address to this gathering.
So good morning, everybody. Respected Chief Guest of this webinar, Dr. Ashok Kumar Nalathambi, and then the coordinators of this webinar, Dr. V. Balasubramani, Professor T. Prakash, and my dear students. It's immense pleasure to me to share some of my thoughts at this moment. Actually, we are planning to conduct one webinar with the eminent professors from NIT, IIT, IIC, and other higher learning institute every month, in such a way that the speaker can share their experience, and it will be a very good eye opener for all you students. This is a main aim or objective of conducting this kind of seminars. Dr. Ashok Kumar had a wide experience in the field of finite element analysis, especially thermal engineering and so on. And sir did his PhD in IIT Madras and masters in IIT, and his doctoral degree from a German university. Sir has a wide experience. And today the topic of webinar is cooling challenges in continuous casting of metals. Actually, this is a very important topic, especially in India-like countries, because many of the casting industries are closing in the European countries because of pollution problem and so on. And now they are shifted to India and other Asian countries. In this scenario, the cooling challenges in the continuous casting plays a vital role. Few years back, we did some consultancy work in nearby industry, and their casting product weight is 2 ton capacity. Normally, the percentage of yield in any casting process is about 50%. So, in order to get the 2 ton product, approximately they will pour 4 ton of molten material in the cavity. So the 4 ton of molten material has to have a uniform cooling throughout the section. Unless otherwise, it will have a residual stresses then and there. And sometimes after cooling, after taken down the product from the demolishing the casting, the product may be not a sound one, which may not be useful to the usage. So in these circumstances, when you are talking about the very big casting, whatever I am telling you, know that is a big valve, butterfly valve. That is a 2 ton weight. Sometimes even a well-known product for you is the bed. Bed is one of the cast product where the if you talk about the long bed around 7 feet, 7.5 feet, the pouring metal weight will be approximately 3 ton to 4 ton. So in these circumstances, the continuous cooling or the cooling is a predominant factor in order to have a sound casting. So today we are having a very good speaker who is having a wide experience in this field, and his lecture will be very useful to all of you, especially those who are in thermal and those who are in manufacturing and those who are doing work in industrial engineering, SIG, say for quality control issues and so on. With this brief welcome, I welcome once again Dr. Ashok Kumar Nalathambi for this seminar. Thank you very much, sir, for your sparing the valuable time with us. And now I welcome Dr. V. Balasubramani to give the brief resume of Dr. Ashok Kumar. Thank you very much, sir. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Thank you for a nice introduction.
Thank you, Chokalingam sir. Now I introduce our chief guest, Dr. Ashok Kumar Nalathambi. Now he is working as assistant professor in Department of Mechanical Engineering, National Institute of Technology, Tiruchirappalli. He completed his UG BE in Mechanical Engineering the year 2001, and he completed MTech in engineering mechanics in IIT Madras, Chennai, the year 2006. And he also completed a PhD and a post-doctoral fellowship in process and system engineering in Ottawa and Group University, Magdeburg, Germany. So his professional experience starts from year 2001 to 2004. So he's working as a lecturer in Anna University, Chennai. And then he joined as a project officer in IIT Madras the year 2006, and he served up to 2007. And then he worked as a university lecturer in Ottawa Group University, Magdeburg, Germany, from the year 2012 to 2018. And then he joined as a assistant professor in Department of Mechanical Engineering, NIT Trichy, in the year 2018, and he is continuing his service in NIT Trichy. So after joining this institution, now he had two good projects. One from a SCRB Startup Research Grant, and the topic of experimental investigation of thermal cracking due to riveting phenomena during a metal quenching process. And one more project in the name of experimental investigation of water rejection during metal quenching with the support of NIT. So he completed 5 projects in different European country from the year 2007 to 2017. So one is project topics are influence of cooling water surface tension on quenching of metal plates for Germany in the year 2008. In the 2009, he completed projects in the topic of distortion of a steel plate located at chip assembly exit in the German company. And the year 2013, he completed a project modeling of a steel castability of a Hazlet caster in the Europe. Similarly, in the year 2016, he completed on a project a MATLAB interpretation of temperature profiles of continuous casting in a stainless steel. And at last, we completed one project in Austria, simulation of a direct steel casting process. And then he had a lot of publication in reputed journals. As his publications are around 25 publication in various journals. With this introduction, I handed over to the session to Ashok Kumar sir to deliver his topic on the challenges of metal casting.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thanks for the very elaborated introduction. So I would like to thank our HOD, yeah, and also our organizer, Dr. Balasubramanian sir. And I'm very proud to I could not present physically in TCE. So TCE has emotionally from our childhood. So I did my BE in PSNA College of Engineering near Tindukal. So therefore, that was a dream for us in BTech time. So it's very good to come back and give a lecture in the institute. So let's go to the topic. I think introduction and the other things may be boring. Let's start the today topic. So I will share my screen. So first explore the topic first. So students can update if there is anything, if I am asking, so you can interact, yeah. So if voice is audible or whatever comments.
Screen is visible. Screen is visible, sir. Visible.
Yes, sir. So full screen, yeah.
Full screen is visible, sir.
Okay, thank you, sir. So myself, Ashok Kumar, yeah. So I am going to give a talk about the cooling challenges in a continuous casting of metals. So if you decode it, so the cooling is a separate thing and the continuous casting of metals. So we have to discuss in first we have to understand what different casting process. Mainly, I am not going to talk about the net shape casting. For example, we have a sand mold something or die casting, not like that. So I am going to talk about continuous. So that means the object is in another dimension is infinite. Yeah? 2-dimension is the cross section, and third dimension is almost infinite, or otherwise finite with the large dimensions. For example, 7 meter, 10 meter, like that. So therefore, the word is a continuous casting. Yeah. So continuous casting of metals. And I am going to discuss not about the mechanical aspects. Mainly, I am going to discuss about the thermal aspects, the cooling challenges. Yeah. So let me start with my talk. So I will give a small videos also briefly. So I think these are all some YouTube videos, and I have my special experimental videos. So I think YouTube videos will warm up for you to come to this topic. Yeah. So let us discuss the first one. Is the continuous casting of steel. Steel ingots or the slabs or the billets, whatever. So steel ingots, that they have different names. For example, ingot, slab, billets, based on the cross section. So they used to name the cast material in a different way. So the fundamental process is very simple. Yeah. As a childhood, we all have played like a clay. So we make the clay and we make it in a shape, and we make that casting is everyone can appreciate. But when you are commercializing, when you are producing in the mass production, quality matters, cost matters, energy matters. So everything we have to look into that. For example, so this is the ladle. We bring the molten steel, and we store a reservoir in the tundish. There the liquid steel is stored to supply continuously to the mold, the vibrating mold. It's around 1.2 meter length in a little curved shape. So they cast in the beginning at vertical stage, and they bend and they make it into horizontal. Yeah. So what that is, they have to supply this molten steel to the mold by means of a submerged entry nozzle. Submerged entry nozzle. There the liquid metal is allowed to cool. So for that, they circulate the water in a opposite to the gravity direction, from the bottom to the top. So they circulate the mold wall. So the mainly mold is made up of copper alloys. So they will give a cooling, continuous water jacket cooling. So therefore, the initial solidification will be established. Yeah? Initial solidification will be established, and the strand will be continuously moving. Yeah, the strand will be continuously moving. So that this what we discuss mainly is a steady state situation. Yeah, anything given to the common audience is the steady state. We will not talk about the transient startup stages, because so initially you cannot simply with the another side is not closed, you cannot put a liquid, so it will not come. You cannot initiate the process. So initiation is a separate study. Yeah, but that is only one time. For example, in a day or in a shift, they start means that is a very short period. So I am going to discuss about the steady state mainly. Yeah. So the molten metal, almost the melting temperature of steel is above 1500, in the range of 1500 to 1600. It depends on the alloy. And the Swiss steel, I have worked collaboratively with almost from 2009 to 2018, 9 years. I worked with the Swiss steel located in Switzerland. So they make the steel ingot of square cross section. So they make the square cross section, and they cut into the bars, and then the finite length they cut, and then they make this ingot or the slab for the rolling. Finally, they heat and roll and make into sheets and thin the rods in a rod shape. So for that they make this ingot. So the scrap they collect and melt and then pour. Yeah. So the Swiss steel capacity currently is one single. This is a single unit. So they have 4 units. I will show the video. So they have 4 units, around 100 tons per hour they will produce. In single unit is around 25 tons per hour. And the strand will move approximately, it will vary from alloy to alloy. So that was 2.4 meter per minute. So 1 minute you can cast up to 2.4 meter. So I would like to point, as we are focusing on the cooling aspect, so there are 2 different kind of cooling zones, the mold cooling and the the water cooling in the secondary cooling. We call this as a primary cooling, and we call secondary cooling, that is in steel casting, it is in the form of sprays. And what is the mechanism of heat transfer in the mold cooling? It's like, for example, it's a single phase heating. Yeah, the mold wall is approximately or otherwise nucleate boiling. The mold wall would be approximately 100, above 100 or 120. So therefore, nucleate boiling is possible. For the thin layer, then the remaining water, the mix up, then the water temperature increase might be around 15 to 20 degrees Celsius, not much in the mold region. Yeah, but in the secondary cooling region, the very low water flow rate is used. Yeah, and the film boiling is the major heat transfer mechanism from the water to from the ingot to the water droplets. And there are a lot of issues in this steel continuous casting, that longitudinal cracks and the segregation and bleed out. There are so many issues are there. Okay, let's go to the video. Yeah. So this is exactly in Swiss steel. So they have 4 strands. They are in the starting stage. So you can see the 4 strands which are coming out. So steel casting is quite, I think you can see my screen.
Yes, sir. Screen is visible, sir. Visible. Video is running.
Yeah, okay. So the 4 square cross section. So they are starting. It's a startup stage. So that were the starter. There is a separate unit. I will show in another video. So it is very hot environment. You cannot just like that go and stand nearby. So the radiation is huge. It's around 1500 to 1700 range temperature. So even 10-meter distance minimum, that you will feel the hotness. So that you cannot easily go nearby. So in the steel casting, but relatively aluminum casting is a low temperature environment. Yeah. So this mold region and all is quite difficult to visualize. So very narrow congested area. So therefore I cannot show that area. So what is happening here, but we can appreciate the strands and some oxidation layers. Oxidation is occurring on the steel which is exposed to atmosphere. It's already crossed the cooling regions. The curved region itself cooling is over, and these are all just radiation cooling. Yeah. Then they will cut into around 10-meter length, and then they cool to room temperature. So this is what happening. Okay, we stop here and we will go to the, I think this is just a strand moving, nothing new. So I go to the another video that explains the process little bit in more detail. Yeah, this is the starter. The starter blocks, dummy blocks are going now. This will go. Not exactly that what video in the beginning I showed, that is the Swiss steel, that is not the same they will do. So this is the cross section is different, the metal, but the process is nearly the same. So it will go and then they pour the molten metal and then it will come out, so that it gives the third dimension arrest. So then once it is started and it is continuously pulled, yeah. So that's all. Then the starter block will be disconnected. Then you no need. Then afterwards you can continuously feed the liquid. So this is the way they start the process. For the beginners, this kind of doubts will always come. So how they start the process, how they pour the liquid, how it will come. That's why I wanted to show this video. Okay. So the another one, I think little explain about the casting process. So this is not much technical, but it's just understanding purpose. Yeah. My theme of the topic today talk is not this one actually, to explain the casting process, not that, but I want to focus on cooling. But at least Yeah. Okay. So let us go to the, this will continuously run. Okay. I hope that we all understood the steel casting process. Yeah. Very simple. The components are the ladle, tundish, mold, and then the secondary cooling nozzles. Secondary cools are arranged in the curved region itself. When it becomes flat, so I think you cannot see the cooling and all it's curved. The curved radius is around approximately 8 to 9 meters. They will keep around 8 meters of curve. That means radius of the curve, the circle. So they make align with the circle and then they make into horizontal. Yeah. This is a one kind of casting, and generally this is used for very low thermal conductivity material. This cannot be used for high thermal conductivity material like a copper and aluminum. It is very complicated. You will understand why. Because I think when the thermal conductivity of steel is in the range of 30 to 35 to 50, very low when compared to the aluminum and copper. Copper is on nearly 6 to 7 times, 6 times approximately high thermal conductivity, and aluminum is almost 4 times higher thermal conductivity than steel. So therefore, when thermal conductivity plays a key role in the casting, this kind of continuous casting process, I will explain that in later stage. The next one we are going to learn about direct chill casting. This direct chill casting is used for aluminum and magnesium alloys. So magnesium is nowadays is emerging. In the past 10 years, the people are focusing on the magnesium alloys. The applications are increasing. But aluminum applications, I think you all have well understood, well established. So I no need to say. But I have not much worked in magnesium. But one of my scholar, PhD students, student is working in magnesium. Almost is going to submit the thesis about, she explored the magnesium DC casting. Okay, so what is the direct chill casting? If you look the direct chill casting, it is not a continuous casting. It is a semi-continuous casting. So it's semi-continuous in the sense, for example, it is not an infinite length. They will cast up to 7 to 8 meters. Yeah, this is a cut section in a perpendicular direction to the plane. That makes sense that the mold is running like a rectangular cavity. In the mold is like they fill the water. Yeah, there's continuously supply the water, and there is an electromagnetic slit instead of conventional molds. The problem with the conventional molds that there is a friction. That means the solidified metal has to slide in the mold. So what happened? There is a friction. The surface finish is not so good quality. So that means you have to machine it before any heating and rolling operations. But nowadays they come up with the technique electromagnetic slit. So using this electromagnetic slit, they could be able to support the liquid metal up to some centimeters. Yeah, up to maybe around 30 to 50 centimeters of meter. Molten metal will not move and just stay like a solid. The electromagnetic slit will magnetize, not magnetize, so they support that, it generates the electromagnetic force. So now that the same launder, they pour the liquid metal, and this is the oxide layers, the green form, and then molten aluminum will transform into the semi-solid aluminum, a massy state, and then it will go to the solidified aluminum, yeah, solidified ingot or billet. This is a we can say that slab actually. the rectangular cross section. Yeah, bloom, otherwise they say. So a billet, it's all interchangeably used, but billet it is generally used for circular shape. Yeah. Okay, this rectangular, and then finally it is solidified. But how they cool is a complete cooling is done. Conventionally, they use the mold here. That means there is a that means conventional casting. The mold is cooled by water, and then that water will flow and touch the ingot. But here, the electromagnetic slit, there is a very small slit around 10 to 20 millimeter area only will touch the ingot. Around 7 to 8 meter total length, 7 millimeter, 6 millimeter, sorry, 10 millimeter is in the order of centimeters is not much roll. So the slit is literally no contact between the metal and the solidifying metal and the mold. So therefore, the conventional molds, I think around they call primary cooling, that only remove the around 15 to 18% of the heat, but the major heat removal is done in the secondary cooling. Yeah, and also there is some amount of cooling which is done from the heat goes to the bottom block. This bottom block initially located at this region here, near to the electromagnetic slit, and then it will be slowly withdrawn, so that the height will increase. So at the end we can cast and take it out. There is a lot of types. Horizontal casting is also there. There is our Kalyan group, Bharat Forge. They put a plant in, I think they put or they bought, I don't know, but I visited their plant. So they are for Bharat Forge, Kalyan group, they are in Germany, nearby Dresden, they have one plant. They are making a horizontal direct chill casting for circular billets. So in that, but in Amag, what I worked, Austria Metal Company, it is located in Rangshofen, in the border, almost the border between Germany and Amag, Austria. So there they have the plant, very huge plant about the direct chill casting of. They are the leading aluminum makers. So they use this process. Yeah. So I just want to show one video so that you can understand this aluminum casting process, the direct chill casting. This is what I am talking about. This, what you have seen, this is what that process is. Such a huge, almost around 7 to 10 meter length. Yeah. So, and cross section is around 0.5 meter by 1.5 meter. Such a huge aluminum blocks casting only that picture I show. I think, yeah, rolling is not our focus. So what you have to appreciate is, so this direct chill casting unit, you cannot see, it is a well actually. It's a 7-meter deep well. So the mold only is visible here. The circumferentially mold will be located, and that is also you cannot see it. It is going. That is inside this. It's a closed container kind of. So I think its videos are not available for this one, and taking is also quite difficult because water will be going like a river kind of high flow rate. Because I will show that this one with this rectangular mold, so continuously supply water. So therefore, I think we have to imagine so how it would be the situation in the DC casting. So they mentioned in the video a maximum of 1000, but I think the melting temperature of aluminum is around 660. So you no need to heat up to 1000, but 700. 700 is the initial launder temperature, but due to heat loss bringing and this thing, they will go to the high temperature, and the furnace temperatures are little higher. Yeah. So this is all about the aluminum casting, but also can cast in a continuous way in a single belt casting. So there is a lot of other ways also to cast aluminum. And the next one, I want to move to the next one. This is a quite interesting work I have done with the Hazlet, the company called Hazlet, the person who invented this method. The name Hazlet is a US based company, American based company. And we had a collaboration with the Hazlet and the Swiss Steel. They come up with a common agreement. What that is that generally this Hazlet casting is used for copper alloys. This is very good for the copper making. So they will have what it's a process. Let us understand. The process is there is a 2 top rolls, 2 bottom rolls, and connected by 2 belts. So 2 belts running top and bottom, separate belts. In between that, you can form a cavity if you give a gap, and the side gaps are filled by this rollers. This kind of the dummy blocks we call. The dummy is going in the side to arrest, so that you can create a rectangular cavity, and then you can start pouring the metal, and then these rollers will pull the belt, and then you could get the rolled product. Yeah. So relatively smooth surface you will get when compared to that, because it is moving. That means belts moving all the time. Therefore, the corresponding metal will not slide in. That means the relative velocity is almost 0. So it moves along with the belt. So therefore, that speed only if the belt will be aligned. Yeah. So therefore, the surface quality is quite good. So these casters are around 3 meters currently they are making for copper. But the project I have done was to integrate. This is not established for steel casting. The Hazlet caster, until now, they have started around 30-40 years back in late 80s. They started for steel, but they are not successful. The problem is that the material properties. That means steel casting, what happened is they will cast in the continuous casting process, which we have seen here, and they cut into and they store it, and then again they have to heat to 1100 degrees Celsius for rolling. So casting and cooling, that means while cutting here itself, the metal is around 900, 800 degrees Celsius approximate temperature. But you have to cut, and you cannot immediately take it to roll. In between, it will be cooled to room temperature almost. So what happened? Again, you have to reheat. It is an energy waste. Yeah. So I think as you all are at good, that means energy aspects. So you can easily understand. So therefore, what that idea is, after the end of this casting, can we send it to the roller? That's what they do it for copper. The copper, what happened? They melt, cast, and get into wire or plates or thin sheets. Whatever is possible in an integrated way. So that is quite achieved, successful in copper industry, but it's quite difficult for the steel industry. So what happened? They want to come up with the startup. The Swiss Steel want to replace the 4 existing mold with the Hazlet caster, and they want to study the feasibility, whether we can cast in this way. But at the end, we come up with around 5.5 meter caster, and the cooling solidification length is around 40 meter, and the condensation temperature is around 40 meter. You need a very big plant, around 100 and 120 meter plant is necessary. So 120 meter complete one scale stretch, and if there is any problem in the product, the pouring, or any problem in the rolling, the disconnecting is quite difficult. But somehow this is very easy for the copper industry. That's what that Hazelight casting is. They are producing machines. So I will show small video about the Hazelight casting process. It's not big, so that we can finish it. So this is what the top roll belt and bottom roll belt, and then side dummies are going. So then here the metal will be poured. So this kind of machines, the company Hazelight is patent, and they are supplying all over the world. So these dummy blocks will create the cavity. So that you can, that is also all are under motion. Yeah? Maybe I can show it again. So I think you can see that this top belt and bottom belt, these two are the two dimensions, and the second dimension is given by the dummy block, and third dimension is infinite. Yeah? So that continuously you can supply the liquid metal, and you will get that. Yeah? And these belts are cooled by water. That's the point. The cooling is there again. You cannot solidify. Before it comes out the caster, you should get a solidified almost around within 1 or 2 meters. It should solidify. That means the metal has to be completely solid, liquid metal. So that is the thing. So therefore, they will give a primary cooling in the belt. Belt will be cooled, and dummy block also cooled. So that cooling only, so we are interested. Yeah? Okay, with this introduction, I think I would like to start my technical aspects. Yeah? Technical aspect is also not boring. It is very interesting only. So I am not going to talk about much technical. Yeah. So just to give an overview, so how you can understand easily. First is the understanding, then only you can go deeper. Yeah. So the next one. Okay, the sound is coming. So I would like to say that different cooling forms, primary, that means fundamental cooling types available in, yeah, you can see. So this is a jet quenching, and the video is running. This is a jet quenching. Okay, this is jet quenching, this is spray quenching, this is immersion quenching. Quenching is a word to lower the temperature of a metal in a faster rate, yeah, by means of water. You can also, now mainly the coolant is water, you can also other coolants. Yeah, the faster rate of cooling we call as a quenching. So what you can do is, this is very we do it in a kitchen and all. So what we do, the hot object, we put it in the water, directly dip into water. The phenomena occurs, for example, spherical ball, yeah, hot ball, you continuously supply heat to the ball and you keep inside the water. Or otherwise, hot ball you bring into water, you drop it. What happens initially, immediate vaporization will form. Yeah, so there will be a vapor layer insulating the spherical ball, and the heat transfer is reduced drastically. And once the favorable temperature is achieved in the spherical ball, then the film collapses, and then you could be able to wet the surface. And this one sprays. It also depends on the metal surface. This is what used in the continuous casting. So the sprays, waters are sprayed with the spray nozzles, and then that spray, fine spray. Like sometimes atomized sprays are available. They will also supply air, and sometimes they will supply only water, and that's all. It all depends on the purpose. So this is the spray quenching, and the last one is the jet. That means we create a thin sheet of water. Yeah, that's what thin sheet, like that jet. number of jets are arranged, means that all jets will, after some distance, the laminar region is crashed, then turbulent, they will all mix, then form a uniform jet. So this is the jet quenching, generally used for that cooling rolled products and continuous casting of non-ferrous metals. So this is what they used it. So fundamentally, we need to understand these three different cooling methods. So quenching means you should not immediately think, okay, dropping. Okay, dosa pan, you are making dosa, at the end you put it in water. So you can see the sudden splashing of water and steam formation, all these phenomena you have observed. Yeah, roughly I'm saying, but this is occurring in a systematic, based on the temperature of the plate. But this you all have experienced. This is generally used for hardening purpose. Faster, extremely faster cooling rate you can achieve. Because the stagnant water, this generally we call it as a pool boiling, the phenomenon. And then the spray quenching, we moderate cooling. This is a little faster, moderate, and this is also faster cooling. Yeah, this is a flow boiling like that. Okay, let's go to the next aspect. I want to show one video about, that is what we recorded in our laboratory during my PhD time. So this is the atomized spray quenching. That means the water is mixed with the air and fine spray is generated. So this is the aluminum plate, circular plate held, and we are giving you. So I think you can ask, you may have a doubt. You are saying about casting, suddenly you are talking about cooling, quenching. So the thing is, first we need to understand the relation. Everywhere we have to cool, otherwise the metal will not transform into liquid to solid. So mold and all are some supporting, but mold also has to be cooled. If there is no mold region, these are the no mold region. We call secondary cooling. Here it is cooled completely by water. So at the 700 degrees Celsius, the metal is poured, and here it will be around 600 approximately, the solidified. So 600 to room temperature we have to cool. We cannot hold the hot block. So that rigidity is questioned there. So therefore we pour directly water. Here the jet cooling, here the spray cooling. Yeah. So these two I am going to inspect more. Yeah. So for that, what we do experiments. So we create a quench setup and we do the experiments. That's what I am going to discuss now. So one setup is, that means we take a heated plate. For example, aluminum 660 is the melting temperature. So we heat up to 550 degrees Celsius and we keep it. And what are the phenomena you observe? You see that initially water is coming. See, there is a circular region, the core region is developing and is spreading, that you can see. So this region is we call it as a wet region, and the outer region we call it as a dry region. Yeah. So water may fall for some region only. It will not fall up to the last, that complete circular region of the plate. Some core region only water sprays will fall. But how the front is moving to the entire plate? Yeah, that is what the wetting phenomena is occurring. That means initially that plate temperature is above the film boiling. That means the immediate wetting cannot occur due to the immediate vaporization. After some time, the initial wetting will occur. That the wetting time, the heat transfer will be very high. The heat flux will reach maximum. And after that, then the wetting front will start moving. So entire boiling process phenomena everything will occur at the front. That white front you can see. So this white front region you can see. So the complete, it will go until the outer and where up to the gravity supporting. So beyond that, it is I think it cannot overcome the gravity force. Then the water will come out. So you can also see there is a distortion. So my PhD initially is focusing on the thermal stresses in this kind of quenching process, and simulate the stresses. Yeah, the stress simulation and all is quite so many physics I need to explain. So I am not focusing for this class. But the distortion is, you can see it. When the moment the wetting occurs, you see the immediately plate comes to the front. It bends. Then after some time it relaxes a little. When the uniform cooling is achieved, then it go back little. It bounce back. Then finally it comes to one little distortion. In the beginning it is a high distortion, and then at the end. So this distortion behavior is also a residual stress studies. Yeah. So, but what we can understand, atomized spray, we can cool the metal, and we want to study this cooling behavior. Yeah, that water and air are mixed here, and fine spray is exerted. This is a 3 millimeter aluminum plate frequency. Now, I want to explain about the Leidenfrost effect, which I think you might have heard what Leidenfrost effect is. When you are studying about the cooling, so you should understand the Leidenfrost effect. So I wanted to show one video so that it satisfies my purpose. Yeah. Yeah. So here the first stage. So this stage is a single phase heating. The water temperature will rise. That's all. There is no phase change, and we are below the 100 degrees Celsius. So everything is a simple phenomena. It's a single phase heating. Yeah. This is what you can appreciate. Wetting will occur. That means that is spreading. It tries to spread the area of. That means second one, they spray. That means they drop the droplet. The droplet is very quickly vaporized. The water will wet still, but it is vaporized. Very faster rate vaporized. This physics has a very huge applications for sterilizing kids like equipments, for example, eating equipments like spoons and milk bottles and all. So what they do, they sterilize us. They will make this phenomena. They will exploit. They want to put a little water, small half tumbler of water they pour, and they maintain the surface temperature around 150 to 180 degrees Celsius. So they can initiate the nuclear boiling, so that vapor is immediately produced, and its temperature is around 150. So therefore, that can go and deposit in the bottles, whatever equipment you want to sterilize. So that will go and again condense. So that time and all that it will get heated, and that germs will get killed, and then you can easily take out. And after that, so it will automatically cut off the power when the water is over. So this is used for the sterilizing, especially used for that. I bought one that sterilizer, that nuclear boiling sterilizer for baby kids, the sterilizing equipments. So after that, if you are increasing the temperature of the plate, then you end up with you cannot wet the surface. So this physics, I think I am not. I think I will share all the videos, and you can watch it. The link. So the thing is here, the physics is that what you need to understand here is The droplet has a little longer life than that wetting. The wetting, maybe it will immediately very faster evaporate, but the droplet, slowly its diameter will decrease. Between evaporation is continuously occurring, but the evaporating vapor itself will give a cushion effect. So in that cushion, the droplet will sit and enjoy some period of time. So you cannot immediately wet. So what happened? So if you want to, you think that higher the temperature gradient, you can exert the cooling will be higher. That law and all, it is, I think the physics is another, the vapor production we have to understand. Yeah, for example, 150 degree to 180, you can cool faster than 300 degree, 400 in aluminum means. Then you have to understand some physics is there. That is the name actually. That is the frost is a freezing. That name Leiden. It's a German word. Yeah. So Leiden-Frost effect. From that they call it as a Leiden-Frost. So this effect is like the thin vapor layer insulates the wet water. Yeah? So therefore, it will not allow to wet the hot surface. So that's what we have to understand. With this only, entire cooling mechanism is hinged. So I think we need to understand this Leiden-Frost effect in a deeper sense. Yeah, I think we could understand what is the Leiden-Frost effect. The droplet which is falling on a hot surface will not wet the surface and it remains droplet for a longer period, and the diameter of the droplet will continuously decrease. There is a continuous vapor production. The vapor will give a insulating, that means heat transfer, it will reduce because that vapor phase is a gas phase, it has a different thermal conductivity, and that the flow velocity gradient, everything. It's a very small thin layer in microns. Yeah. So the modeling, understanding Leiden-Frost effect is also quite challenging, and this science is not yet complete. We cannot simply say, we cannot simply determine the Leiden-Frost temperature for one material. Yeah. So it depends on the water flow rate, it depends on the surface roughness. So many parameters influence the critical temperature. That means the important temperature called Leiden-Frost temperature. Yeah. Now, the entire phase, the cooling, if you observe, so the plate temperature, for example, versus the heat flux, if you plot. So let's move from the low temperature region. If you are below 100 degrees Celsius, heat flux gradually increase. So therefore, this is a single phase convection. Then 100 to, there is a temperature called departure from nucleate boiling. This is the nucleate boiling, that black curve is a nucleate boiling. And the third one, that after the peak, it is again decreasing, it is the transition boiling. And the next region, it is the heat flux either linearly increase or constant. Yeah? So that region, we can call it as a film boiling. The Leiden-Frost temperature is lying here, the blue and the magenta color. Yeah? So there the Leiden-Frost temperature is lying. So we could able to understand the phenomena of this boiling curve is quite more physics is involved. But as a beginner, what you need to understand is single phase convection, forced convection or natural forced convection mostly. We are dealing with the flow boiling. So single phase forced convection is the main mode of heat transfer. You have studied in heat transfer. If you have studied heat transfer, flow over a flat plate, that is the simple case you study. So we will not consider plate temperature remains constant. That means we continuously supply energy and fluid is flowing. There is a thermal boundary layer, velocity bound, momentum boundary layer, and this are Prandtl number. All these things you have studied. This is all we can apply here. But after this, after 100 degrees, that the phenomena is changing. That means the droplet, that means vapor formation will occur. Yeah, and then vapor will try to escape and then go, and the new fresh water will come, so that cooling rate will increase, the heat flux become maximum. And then the transition boiling, all the droplet almost merge and start making that means a connected vapor layer, and at the end this continuous vapor layer exists in the film boiling. So once the continuous vapor layer is persist, so you cannot expect a high heat flux. It's almost comparable with the single phase. So it's like that. It's like a life, we begin and reach peak and then come back and come to initial state. That means almost the two heat fluxes are almost the same level, same order it will come. So the reason is that the phenomena, the vapor production is the physics we have to understand. That here three important parameters in temperature you have to understand: the saturation temperature, departure from nucleate boiling, and Leidenfrost temperature. These three temperature is very important, and the Leidenfrost temperature varies from metal to metal and flow to flow parameter, and even thickness of the plate matters. And in any experiment if you do, and the flow type matters, everything. And departure from nucleate boiling, almost it is around 120 to 150. The majority of the metal, it is almost in that range. Well, above 100, but less than 200. But mostly it is 120 to 150, 160, that range. The departure from nucleate boiling. But this is at the atmospheric pressure, this is the boiling temperature, it's 100 degrees Celsius. And the heat flux point of view, so this is the Q100 heat flux, Leidenfrost heat flux, and the Q max. So these are the 3 plus 3, 6 parameter. With this we can fit the curves and we can establish a theoretical boiling curve. Theoretical boiling. So I think we understood the Leidenfrost effect, we know the quenching, and with this we can start investigating the cooling in a casting process. So I review my the flow. First I explain the different casting process. Then we identify different type of coolings, and we understood how water behaves on the surface. Now we are attaching to the casting process. Let's go to the direct chill casting of aluminum alloys. So direct chill casting, that previously I show electromagnetic chill. Now you can see the mold. This is a conventional casting. The mold exists, and the mold is the reservoir for water, and there is no electromagnetic silt and all. So therefore, that mold initially, the bottom block will close the bottom of the mold region, and then you can wait for initially some time so that the initial solidified layer is formed, so that you can withdraw the bottom block and the metal will continuously be poured, and the cooling water will continuously cool the surface. So you can either produce the bloom, the billets, or the slabs. So what are the important points we need to understand here is, we want to model the cooling process. Heat transfer plus the cooling together, we have to understand how we can achieve. Yeah. Before that, I want to say that primary cooling is occurring at the mold region and secondary cooling is the water. Yeah. So the same water which cools that and comes down. And this the mold length is around 70 millimeter. This is very small. The mold range, not less than 100 millimeter or 10 centimeter. Yeah. So the melting temperature of aluminum alloy is mainly in the range of 660. I say alloy is a pure metal as a 660, pure aluminum, but alloy in sense it has a solidus temperature and liquidus temperature. These two you have to understand. That means there is a temperature below that everything is solid. There is a temperature above that everything is liquid. This TSTL, solidus and liquidus temperature, in between it will choose a mixed state. Both solid and liquid phases coexist. Nearby that means solid dendrites grains will nucleate and that float and they find for the neighbors and then they go attach and they form the strength. So these are the mechanism of solidification. Yeah. So let's focus the modeling. I just want to briefly surpass the equations. So the solid, liquid, and mushy states. Yeah. If there is a isothermal solidification, so at a constant temperature, the metal will undergo phase change. So this is the energy equation we need to solve. This is the Fourier differential equation. So del dot K del theta. That means del squared K into del squared theta. Laplacian operator of theta is the temperature is equal to rho Cp theta dot. Cp in the sense we have to add the latent heat release. When the metal is cooling, it will release the latent heat because for melting we gave that energy. So that's why we could be able to achieve the liquid stage. And when you are coming to solid state, that energy it want to release. So that latent heat and then this F is a phase change function, F fraction function. This phase change function you can simply approximate as a linear, and when the temperature theta s, the liquid solid s temperature, there the liquid fraction is 0, and here the liquid fraction is 1, or the phase change function is 1. In between it can vary linearly. Simple method is changing the specific heat. Yeah, specific heat can vary with the temperature, but in the freezing range you can increase to the high value. So such a way you can simulate the alloy heat transfer. And the interface condition for the isothermal solidification, there is a net heat conducted between solid and liquid interface is equal to the Franck propagation. That means the rho and the enthalpy latent heat multiplied by velocity, the normal velocity, the Franck velocity. The how much area solidified, that latent heat released, is the net heat conducted between solid and liquid. Mostly this gradient we can neglect because the liquid will uniformly mix. There is no much temperature gradient in the liquid, so you can throw out. So therefore, the Franck movement heat is sent it to the solid phase completely. It's just idealization. Yeah, there are a lot of non-equilibrium solidification phenomena are there, so that is not important for us. Okay, this is the simple modeling, and let's look the. I skipped this slide. I think I explained. So my objective I want to explain is the model the real-time casting process, and then to understand the cooling behavior. Yeah, and then we could address the some cracks. For example, there is a cooling related cracks. Yeah. So what happened? The uniform shrinkage it will not experience. So therefore, what happened? Some region will shrink faster and some region will shrink slower. So therefore, you could exert it will produce a residual stress. Due to that, the material tears. That means the crack can initiate. So to understand this, we are modeling this. Okay. So let's go to the one specific case in AMAG. That AMAG Austria metal. So we have done one work. This is the bottom block mold. So from the bottom we inserted the thermocouples, 4 thermocouples. You can see around 6, 7 are there, but that are not coming into play in our modeling verification. Because same one we put it in the left and right, and we took it the front and here the edge. So that 7 thermocouple we are considering only 4. 4 are located around 15 millimeter from the surface of the ingot, around 20, 50, 100, 150 distance. So this growing ingot, the ingot edge is not fixed. It is a liquid metal is continuously bored, and this is the bottom block region. And we are going to investigate the slab size of 380. This dimension is 380 millimeter. This dimension is 1550 millimeter. Height of the ingot which is going to be produced is 700 millimeter. And the casting speed is around approximately 45 to 70 millimeter. One millimeter per second approximately in the range. 1 millimeter per second. That much slowly it will move. And the water flow rate we represent in liter per minute, meter per minute. That means we normalize with the width of the circumference. That means completely. Mostly this dimension we can neglect. So the circumference is to double the width. So the electromagnetic region, slit region is around 33 mm. That means top layer. Okay, I think I hope that I am explaining the problem to you in a clear way. We insert a thermocouple in the bottom block here. This is the bottom block. We insert a thermocouple in this region, and now we start the process. Yeah. So we start the bottom block at the beginning at the top. Then we will pour the metal. Then each thermocouple will receive metal for some time. Then after that, the metal will be continuously supplied. Then the bottom block will move, so the ingot will grow in dimension. Yeah. So let's see the temperature profile we recorded. You see that the thermocouple K1, first one, is first receiving metal and it's getting heated. So it received the metal and the metal is, it crossed. That means metal crossed the K1 position. That means top layer crossed the K1 position. Then it is cooled slightly and little faster, and then there is no cooling at all, and there is a faster cooling. And similarly, K2 thermocouple receives the metal and get heated, and it's getting heated, and then it is moderate cooling, and then no cooling, and then suddenly faster cooling. And the third thermocouple, it is getting heated, and then sudden it is faster cooled. There is no slow, that means constant temperature regions. And the fourth thermocouple, this effect is just heating and then cooling. So heating in the sense the thermocouple is receiving material, so therefore it has to heat. Yeah, that instantly it get heated. That's what the thermocouple heated, and then it is representing the correct temperature, and then that before that it is the cooling is starting. The four different thermocouple locations I think I showed. Yeah. So the fourth thermocouple location we measure the temperature profile. Now, the physics point of view, for example, this is the top region where the metal is poured. So now the K1 thermocouple is from this distance, it is that means from the bottom block it is sitting here. Yeah. So this is where the water is falling. That means it is not at all going to the water region. And here that water is coming in this 96 seconds. That is the A region. The metal is the K1 is starting life at A, and B, that means it is moving down, and near neighbors are under the water imaging region. And the third region, so it is entering into the water touching region, C. And then the fourth region is a D, so it is moved below the imaging region. Yeah. So I will explain. This vertical line represents the electromagnetic slit region, and the water jet is supplied. So the water jet, as immediately it will undergo the imaging region, and then the vertical region is the free falling region. So what imaging region is, by inclined jet if you supply, it has some horizontal momentum up to certain distance. So therefore this has a we classify. Then after some distance it is have only vertical momentum. So there is a horizontal component, all will vanish. So the velocity can be resolved into horizontal vertical, and the vertical component only exists. That we call it as a free falling region. And this is imaging region, free falling region. So the thermocouple K1 I am tracking. K1 first appearing here at the time 64 seconds here, and 96 seconds it is a little cooled from the slit, and third it is faster cooled because it is entering into the cooling region, the imaging region. And C to D, it almost never no cooling up achieved, and D below that, that is what happening we need to understand. Yeah. So now the phenomena, when the water jet is supplied to the hot surface, what happening if the surface temperature is sufficiently high, the vapor film which is produced will oppose the water from the surface, but still water can fight because of some amount of horizontal momentum. Yeah, so therefore this is continuously exists, this. So the vapor production and then the vapor opposition, so by the jet. So these two are in equilibrium. So this is what happening in the Leidenfrost effect time. Then after some time, when the flow rate is increased, when the ingot surface temperature is little lowered, then the water can, the jet can win the vapor and it can wet the surface. Yeah, the top layer there will be a vapor product. That means the vapor film exists, and bottom will exist. but the bottom existing is the beauty. What happened? This one, if it can slightly push, then the jet can deflect. Here continuous pushing, but here reduced pushing, the jet is deflected, and after that this zone has to increase. The wetting zone has to increase. So until this become completely wet, so this vapor will push the water jet. So that means it is falling nearly away from the surface of the hot surface. That means hot plate. So this is a big issue. So we can say that imaging point and the rewetting, this we call this imaging temperature and rewetting temperature. There is a certain temperature, below that there is no wetting. Below that it is wet, that means below that there is a wetting, and above that there is no wetting. That means these regions are above the rewetting temperature. Yeah. So now we need to model this. Yeah. So what I would like to say is, this can persist a very dangerous situation. For example, if your flow rate is low and your casting speed is really high, then you never wet the surface. So such a situation can occur. Permanent ejection. We call this the jet deflection, we call it as ejection. So continuously water will never cool the surface. So it remains at a high temperature. And there is another situation, immediate wetting. If you supply enormous amount of water, a faster jet, then you can immediately wet. But in reality, in experiment, mixed things is occurring. That means sometime it is ejection and sometime it is wetting. It is a mixed. Modeling this is quite challenging. Modeling in the sense correctly capturing the physics and quantifying the phenomena. That is not an easy thing. So from my experience, this project I took in 2012 and I investigated 2 years and I was not successful and I threw away. And I was doing some other work, and then I could solve this in 2016. In the beginning, it was an unsuccessful project. And later I could be able to identify this phenomena, this ejection phenomena. But what we were doing experiments is opposite. So I will explain later. So that experiments results I will show, then we can come back. This is the experimental setup we have. So what we take a plate and we heat it in the furnace, we bring to the quench platform and we supply water from the tank with the pump, we maintain the flow, and here this is the moving mold mechanism. So this moving mold mechanism will move the water mold. And it is very important. Before that, we don't have this one, this setup. Then after this one only, we come up with this. We identify, yes, we need a moving mold. Because I think once I show the video, you will appreciate. So we measure the temperature for using not thermocouples. We measure with the infrared camera. So that means it's a non-contact. It will not touch the hot surface. You don't need to touch the hot surface. You're 2 meters away. So you could be able to capture the temperature in a cold field. And this is very expensive. These cameras are two types are there. It is the cryogenic, that means cooled cameras are in terms of crores. This infrared camera. All other equipments are affordable price, but only this camera is very expensive. But I think that bolometer cameras are available now. Micro bolometer, that is around 25 to 30 lakhs. So, and large number of ranges of thermal camera, infrared cameras are available, but for the academic research purpose, so you need to really invest around more than 20 lakhs. Then only you can get this kind of camera. Okay, so then now I can show you that two different things. That means the situation which we were investigating at the beginning, and then we identify the problem. So you can see the first video. So in this, you can observe that when we keep the plate static, when you keep the mold static, you are not reproducing the exact situation of direct chill casting. You see that water is falling all the time in the cold region. The wetting is occurring at the top, and the front is moving down, and the heat is flowing from down to up. But that is not true in DC casting. In direct chill casting, heat is flowing from up to down. Hot region is in the up, and cold region is down, isn't it? So that is a vice versa. That means inverse of that. So therefore, you see the static situation. So you can see that all the time water is coming from the colder side. So I think you can understand the wetting front. This is the wetting front which is propagating. So where that for boiling phenomena is occurring. Yeah? So the wetting front which propagates downwards. The second video you can see that. So now the mold is moved upwards. Now water is falling all the time to the hot side. In this video, you can see that water is falling on the hot side. So when the water falling on hot side, that reproduces the experiment. That means the industrial casting process. So therefore, maybe I can play it again. So you see that there is a small, this down region is the ejection. The water ejection occurring region. So I repeat again. You see the bottom region, still it is not wetting. Slowly it is moving. This is what happening in that temperature profile. So this video, if you carefully observe, so you can understand. So the bottom region, if you focus, so the wetting is not propagating at a faster rate than here. So we call that the small region as the imaging region. This small region is imaging region. Imaging region is continuously moving. But in a reality, mold is fixed, plate will move. Yeah. Reality, the mold, either, but both will produce the same effect. But both static is a totally nonsense reproduction of the real system. We cannot rely on this. But we can understand the cooling behavior and all these things, but we cannot apply directly. Yeah. So that we conducted a lot of experiments in the static mold. You can see that how the temperature profile will change, how the wetting is occurring. This is the infrared image. From the infrared image, we will get the temperature profile. So the bottom region is all the time hot and top region is cold. So how the wetting front, you can see the wetting front, which is but I think jet is splashing, so you cannot see the wetting front movement in the static water mold condition. And then moving plate, I think you can understand when now we fix the mold and we move the plate. This is a real DC casting situation. So real DC casting situation, and then infrared image, and this is the temperature. And here the hot side is all the same top side, and the bottom side is cool. Yeah. And now I want to emphasize the phenomena ejection. So ejection is, for example, initially the plate temperature is high. When the flow rate is low, immediately the water will be ejected because of Leidenfrost effect. Then when the plate is moving, continuously water will eject. And after some time, wetting will occur and the wetting front will propagate. So that you can see it here. You see that high temperature, low temperature, and then further high temperature is coming. So this region is colder. This region is colder, but this region is hotter because of the water ejection.
Hello.
So then I think, sir, is the time we are crossing, yeah?
Sir?
Time, can I take 10 minutes, sir? Then I can wind up.
Okay, sir. Okay, sir. You take 10 minutes, sir. No problem. No problem.
Within 10 minutes, because I'm in the middle. The second part I omit, and we will wind up with this theme. Yeah, I omit the.
Okay, sir. We will wind up within 10 minutes, sir. No problem.
Okay, sir. Okay. Maximum 10 minutes I will wind up.
Okay, okay, sir.
So, I think the water ejection you understood. That is the important thing. So I am repeating this one. Previously, continuously temperature will decrease. But here, if you observe this bottom region, if you observe this bottom region, you observe carefully, this bottom region is not decreasing. It is same temperature it is maintaining. It takes some time. Then it is the bottom region. This is the bottom thing. It is changing now. Yeah. So this is what infrared. Instead of a real image, you can observe more in infrared image. Infrared image. So you can see that. So this region is colder. Then this region is hotter. Okay, so this is the main effect. So I think I skip these theories and then I move to the boiling curve. So we have to establish two different boiling curve in the free falling region and imaging region. So imaging region, there is a possibility of Leidenfrost. But in the free falling region, there is no possibility of Leidenfrost, because Leidenfrost effect to exist, there should be a water layer should be there. That means vapor is there and water. So water and vapor fight. But once vapor wins, then it kicks the water. Then there is no point in that Leidenfrost effect. That means it is the jet is deflected from the surface. So therefore, we need to address with the two different boiling curves. One with the, for example, rewetting temperature is 300. Then above that there is no heat flux. That means if the plate temperature above this, the heat flux is negligible. When the Leidenfrost temperature is 500, above that, their heat flux is almost constant, and that is a little higher than the rewetting temperature, the rewetting effect. So using these two boiling curve, so we would like to model that means the influence of how the Leidenfrost will change with water flow rate. So the higher the water flow rate, higher would be the Leidenfrost, faster will be the cooling. Lower the water flow rate, lower will be the Leidenfrost, and lower will be the cooling. Yeah. And similarly, we need to establish the relation between imaging point and rewetting temperature. So where the imaging temperature, according to that, rewetting temperature has to vary. Imaging temperature is controlled from the Leidenfrost, that means effect with respect to flow rate. This all we have to model in an integrated way in a real system. But in what reality they do is, in the industrial casting, at the beginning, they will not supply water continuously. They will supply water in a pulsed way. That means they switch on the water for some 1.2 seconds, and 0.8 seconds they will switch off. 2 seconds is one cycle, or 1.5 is one cycle, and 1 second they will supply water, 0.5 seconds they will stop. It's called pulsed. So due to this pulsing effect, this Leidenfrost is lowered. Lowering the Leidenfrost will improve the chances of the ejection. So with this, so we could be able to model the casting process. We could simulate the casting process. So this simulation, you can see that the ingot is growing, and the temperature from the top we are plotting. From the top layer is always, at the top is always 650. And the bottom temperature is decreasing, and then it is increasing, then wetting is occurring, then it is dropping out, and then it is completely. So that we could be able to, you have to model the boiling curve and the imaging and the rewetting temperature is correctly relation. The boiling curve has to be incorporated with the flow rate. The flow rate changes, Leidenfrost temperature will change. Imaging point, that means dynamic boiling curve we have to establish, so that we could be able to simulate this effect. Now we are comparing the the experimental profile. With this, all the parameter, you see that we are able to match. So we are not using thermocouple, we are simulating. Therefore, we come from high temperature. Therefore, this region is not important. So therefore, there is a slight difference. Yeah. We are keeping K1 at little inner side, and you can also see the surface. So the surface temperature is given in dotted line, block line. The initially surface temperature drops faster, then again it suits. Again it suits because it's reheating. So reheating occurs and then it remains at some constant temperature, then it is cooling faster. So if you look at the K1 thermocouple location, so we are able to match the temperature profile because we identify the physics correctly. The physics is here that there is a electromagnetic slit cooling, here it is the imaging region cooling, and here the ejection phenomena, and here the front is reaching and the front wets the surface. So this is for the K1 thermocouple position, and we are similarly we are able to match for K2, K3, K4 regions. Not 100% accurate. Yeah, our objective is to capture the phenomena. So not to 100% match the data. Then it is so many physics we have to incorporate. So that is not the scope. But still, if you are able to, if you can work more, so we could match the temperature profile accurately. So measuring this experimental, that means experimentally measuring in real time DC casting is a really challenging task. So production you have to modify. So you cannot be productive whole day. You have to spend. You have to insert thermocouple. Everything has to, because it is solidified. Thermocouple will be internally solidified. You have to cut and throw that piece and remelt. You cannot use it. Yeah. So you cannot measure with some other mechanisms because the interior temperature we want. There is a chances that thermocouple can damage. So all complications are involved. Somehow we measure the temperature and then we modify our modeling and then we decode it, and based on our experiments, these experimental results will help us to decode these phenomena. So this theory part I think I am omitting, and then I could be able to model this. And I want to comment about these two different extreme situations. If the water immediately wets, you get a cold kind. That means every point will undergo imaging point, and then immediately imaging point itself it's wetted, and then it becomes at low temperature. But if the wetting is not occurring at the imaging range, imaging region, then water will be ejected continuously. Then you will end up with the continuous hot casting. That is not a good situation. This is also not good situation. You have high thermal gradient. Here, very low thermal gradient. But in reality, is what happening is in some region it is wetting, ejection, and followed by wetting. So this is what happening in a real-time DC casting. Yeah. So similarly, we also have a stress simulation. So I don't want to model the modeling aspect. I don't want to say. So we use a plane strain model. So therefore, out of plane stress is important. Sigma ZZ. So you can see that sigma ZZ is the block one. So imaging region, all the stress components are high, and free falling region it is coming low, and in the bottom block region it is further low. But in the this is what the ejection region. This ejection region, there is a not a continuous decreasing trend, there is a shooting up. So ejection is what I want to say will increase the stress level of the material. But here the stress levels are in compressive range. Compressive range means there is no possibility of crack opening. And if there is a tensile stress values, there is a high chances that crack can initiate in the imaging region and also during the ejection region, but relatively high in the imaging region. So relatively high in the imaging region, the crack can originate. So there is a second part for DC is the steel casting. So I skip this. So this is also very interesting, how we model the droplet and these things, and we get a film boiling heat flux. But I think I skip and I go to the last part. So I think I don't want to bore you much. So the current research, what my team and we are very much interested is when the plate is heated above the solidus temperature, little bit 5 to 10 degrees Celsius above, that means 10 to 20% solid if you introduce, a liquid if you introduce, definitely we are ending up with a crack. So there is these are the horizontal cracks, these are horizontal cracks, vertical cracks. So the crack from top to bottom, the random side cracks. So they all are same plate, same 7050 alloy, the same thickness almost. So only these are all real cast. This the piece we got from Amag, the real casting surface. One we quenched with the smooth surface. One quenched with the smooth surface, and we are observing all the plates crack. So hot tearing is a phenomena which occurs during the solidification. So that cracks will exist only during the solidification. That means the fighting. For example, the material is continuously shrinking. In the gap you have to feed. If you are unable to feed, then the gap will come and that gap will propagate. So this effect we are investigating. So for that I want to do, I have conducted one experiment. I want to show that video. You see that the right side video, you can see the crack, horizontal cut. In the crack, water is coming to the front, you see. Yeah, so water is from back side we supply water, front side we put a black coating and we keep the infrared camera at the front. This is for my recording, I kept the camera, and another video camera we recorded. So you can see that continuously cracks. Here the IR camera, you can see the water coming front. So this is one crack, and there is another crack. This is another crack, horizontal cracks. So I think this I repeat. So this is very useful for you to understand. So the first crack, second crack, third crack, fourth crack, fifth crack, sixth crack. 6 horizontal cracks occurred. These plates are heated. This is a 7050 aluminum alloy. Casting this alloy is quite challenging, and but this alloy is in high demand, but only the casting is difficult. So what to do? We have to investigate and understand how it behaves during the semi-solid quenching. So that's what I am doing research. So now with this I try to wind up my talk, and I hope that I have given enough insight about the cooling issues. So in the continuous casting, but mainly I focus on direct chill casting. But steel casting also I have worked, and Hazlet also I have worked. But I think it is we cannot discuss everything in a single thing, and it's also you will be get bored. So now I am, sir, I have finished my talk, and I think I am open for the questions.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you. So if you have any questions, students, you may type. So I have one question regarding Leidenfrost effect.
Yes,
so
sir.
this effect, how it will be controlled for different types of casting, for aluminum casting as well as for stainless steel casting? I think the
Yes,
effect
sir.
may be different. How it will be controlled, sir? Can you explain the?
Sir, that Leidenfrost effect we should not view as a we should have it view it in a neutral sense. In aluminum casting, Leidenfrost effect has a negative effect. So that is blocking the cooling. But in a steel casting, Leidenfrost effect is favorable to us. So what happened is, when the steel casting, the core temperature, I will show that slide, sir. That is, I think, this if you see the temperature profile. Steel casting, you see the core temperature until solidified, it is at high temperature.
Sure.
So around 1500, but the surface is cooled to 1000. So even this 500 degrees Celsius temperature gradient is really enough to make a break. If you can cool surface, if you cool to maybe room temperature, then definitely you will end up with the cracks and the metal will come out. So therefore, here Leidenfrost temperature is helping us to maintain the surface temperature high. So therefore, we have to view that Leidenfrost effect in two different approach. For example, in our colloquially in local we say that the temple and all we will do the theme idikkirathu. So that and all Leidenfrost effect, that is favorable to us. That means that our sweating will block the that means immediate vapor will block the wetting, so that you will not feel the heat completely to your body. So that is one side favorable. Another side, it is, for example, aluminum kind of high temperature thermal conductivity material. So that is a problem. It is a problem.
It's not favorable. It's a problem.
And also the range, if you see, sir, steel around 800, 700 to 800 is the Leidenfrost temperature. For aluminum, it is approximately 300 to 400 is the Leidenfrost temperature. It is not a single temperature. So it's a quite large range. Even one alloy, if you take, so there are a lot of parameters controlled. So I think measuring the Leidenfrost is quite challenging.
Sure. Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So is there any other questions students can ask?
Students, if you have any questions, you may ask, or you just type in chat box. Okay, I think so. No more questions. So we will wind up session. So now I invite Professor T. Prakash to propose a vote of thanks.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Okay, once again, warm greetings to everybody. It's good time to propose vote of thanks. It's a great honor to me to propose vote of thanks on this occasion. So first, I would like to thank today's resource person, Dr. Ashok Kumar Nallatambi, Assistant Professor, Department of Mechanical Engineering, National Institute of Technology, Trichy, for his excellent and informative webinar. Sir, the session is really meaningful. Thank you very much for your support towards TCE, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Right. I record my sense of deep gratitude to our TCE management and respected the principal, Dr. S. Mercy Sonli, ma'am, to allow us to conduct this kind of webinars. Thank you, ma'am. I am extremely grateful to our beloved head of department, Dr. K. Chokkalingam, sir, for this continuous support and guidance. Thank you, sir. I express my sincere thanks to all deans, HODs, and faculty members of TCE. Thank you all. So I express my sincere thanks to Dr. V. Balasubramanian, Assistant Professor of Mechanical Engineering, one of the organizers of this webinar. Thank you, sir. Without you, this program would happen. Thank you, sir. So finally, I would like to thank all mechanical engineering faculty members and students for their active participation and involvement. So without your involvement, this program won't get success. Thank you all, and we will meet on other webinars. Thank you. Thank you all.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
So thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you.
Thank you.
So I can leave, sir. Yeah.
Yes, sir. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Thank you, sir.